Hi everyone, my name is Bill. I'm an alcoholic. I've been through this work as it's laid out in our big book with a loving God, a patient sponsor, many meetings like this. Slothfully working my 9th step, and more will be revealed on that. And I'm living the principles of my life to the best of my willingness each day. I am recovered a day at a time from that hopeless state of mind and body because of this work that I've done on myself, and that I continue to carry to other people, other men that want it. I'll give you just a quick synopsis of how I got here. So my sobriety date is April 23rd, 2012. I do have a home group, Ashland Sunday Morning, that has been my home group since I got sober and participated in recovery. I have had the same sponsor since I started my recovery, and we're in touch weekly. I'm an active member of my group. I go to quite a few meetings every week, and I try to keep my head in the tent by carrying this message. I know I'm an alcoholic because I identify with the physical allergy that this book talks about in the doctor's opinion. And when I was in my early 20s, I was drinking and doing other things, other drugs, and I actually went into a dental office and I had some wisdom teeth extracted. I was prescribed some pills for pain that I had never taken before, didn't know what they were. And it said right on the bottle, "Do not drink alcohol, it will intensify this effect." So, you know what I did? I went next door and bought a fifth and drank alcohol with it. And I think that day was the day that I actually triggered the allergy that this literature talks about. I remember right away, once I took a pill and a shot, that I was in the best mood of my life. And I'm like, wow, this feels so good that I don't ever want to stop doing this. Well, I am under the impression today that that's an abnormal reaction to alcohol. And that when I trigger my allergy, I have that abnormal reaction. I didn't understand that at first. I said to my sponsor, I'm not sneezing, when I take a shot. And he said, well, look up the word allergy, and I did. And it said abnormal reaction, and that I could identify with, so I went with that. I also am under the impression that after I triggered the physical allergy, I became mentally obsessed over the drugs and the alcohol. And once that started, then the phenomenon of craving developed, and I was without defense against any of that. So now I'm in full-blown alcoholism at the age of 24, and I don't know it. And that was a really, really big problem because I had no idea that I was in the grips of a progressive illness. I had no clue whatsoever. So all I knew was that I felt really good when I did these things and that I'm able to manage everything in my life so much easier. So I kept going that way for 24 years of my adult life. But, I used these substances so that I could cope with life, and that's an abnormal reaction because of the allergy, What I really wanted to know when I got here was why me? I see other people taking drinks with impunity, and they can drink, they can put it down, they don't touch things for a month, a year. And then they go to a wedding and have a couple more drinks. And this is irritating, It really was. I was in talk, that all went on my 4th step, folks, all of it. But I soon found out that I was different in the bodily sense. So my chemical makeup is what sets me apart as a distinct entity, That I have a different chemical makeup than some people do. I don't like to say I'm not normal, but I like to say I'm different in the chemical sense in my body so that the alcohol and drugs trigger an allergy that I have that other people may not have. And that was really good information for me. Because now that I know I'm in the grips of an illness, okay, so now what do I do about it? You know, what am I going to do about this? You know, after living in that illness for 24 years and building up a life around myself and having a life and a business and all these good things that God gives us, you know, the disease progressed to a point very slowly over 24 years, very slowly, so that I didn't really see it coming. So the last 4 years of it were so bad that I actually lost everything and ended up in jail. And here I am, that prominent businessman of good earning potential that our literature talks about, and I end up in jail. Well, why was this, you know? What happened to my life? And that's exactly what happened to my life. I'm not a bad person. I'm a sick person that needs treatment, you know? Once I found that out, and I was reading the doctor's opinion, I remember when I first started participating in this work, what a relief it was to know that it was the manifestation of an allergy, that there is a reason for this, that I did not make a conscious decision to destroy my life and hurt all the people in it that I love. Wow, I'm like, what a concept. All right, so now what? You know, now what? You know, I'm out of jail 3 days, and my sister's in the program. She had 19 years at the time, and she brought me to meetings. You know, I hopped on. And I only did that because things got real painful, chaotic, and unmanageable. Because if I could have kept on going and still made money and sustained life, I probably wouldn't be here. That's just the truth. You know, I went to a meeting in Southborough one night, and I was with my brother-in-law, and he said to me, I'm taking this guy home. This guy's going to take you home. And I look over, and this guy's smiling at me, and I'm like, oh, boy. And I can hear my brother-in-law, Jerry, you know, he at the time he had like 37 years or something. He's like, you need to be open-minded and willing. And I'm hearing his little voice in my head, and I'm like, okay, all right. So, you know, I says, okay, so I go out to this guy's truck. He opens his door. I jump in. He pats the seat. He says, I told you I'd save you that seat. Well, I'd ran into this guy 18 years before. I'm a general contractor, carpenter by trade, and he was in a basement doing some wiring that I was framing. And at that time, 18 years prior to that night, he said he'd save me a seat. You know what I said? And I didn't realize that the people we were working for were in the program too. I'm like, shh, don't say anything. I don't want the customer to hear you. But obviously, he saw something in me at that time that he thought I might need a meeting, you know? So there's God for you, the great chess player, right? Maneuvering people, putting them in your path. So I looked over at this guy, and I'm like, I almost threw up on him when he said that, because I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe, how did this happen, I'm saying? How did this happen, you know? And, you know, I often reflect back to that and think it's not odd, it's God, you know? There's a woman that I love dearly in this program that helps many women. And she says that all the time, and it's the truth of it, you know? I know that I was in a hopeless place when I came here, absolutely hopeless. You know, I don't like going into big drunkalogs. I've got many jackpots to talk about, but I don't believe this is the place to do it. I like to talk about the solution here that I've found. You know, my sponsor literally took my hand and put it in God's hand that night. You know, he handed me a big book. And, you know, first question for him was, what do you take? Because I took many milligrams of opiates to feel the way this guy was feeling that night. And he said, I don't take anything. He said, I have a relationship with God that I trust and rely upon, and I practice principles, spiritual principles in my life, as it talks about in this step. And I didn't even really know what all that stuff meant at that time. I was taking some comfort in the fact that, you know, I was sitting next to a person that I knew 18 years before that night that was still just as happy as he was then, as he is now. I'm like, I don't believe this. This is weird. So whatever this guy was going on in this guy's life, I knew he had something in the way of a solution to what was going on with me, because he shared some of his experience with me And quickly I identified, as I did in all the meetings I went to. You know, first when I started coming to meetings, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of us, man. These halls are packed. And, you know, I believe there's strength in numbers, you know. So, you know, I've gone through the work. You know, he handed me that book. I read the first 63 and a half pages. And he handed me a highlighter. He says, now highlight stuff that stands out to you and underline things you don't understand so we can discuss it. And put an asterisk and an underline beside words you don't understand so I can have you look them up. So I did all of that, and my book lit up like a rainbow, you know. And he was careful not to brand me an alcoholic as I am with anyone else that I come across. You know, he said, this is a self-diagnosed illness. This is something you have to, you know, decide for yourself. I can't tell you if you have this illness or not. It's up to you to decide. And after I saw the first 63 and a half pages, I was like, yeah, I think I have this illness. So now that I know I have this illness and I've made all these conclusions in my mind through the first 3 steps, now what am I going to do about it? So I remember sitting at my kitchen table that night on August 12th, 2012, and I'm holding hands at my kitchen table with this guy. That was pretty strange. But I was willing to do it because I was in a lot of pain, you know. And we did a formal 3rd step together at that kitchen table. And it says, now next we launch out on a vigorous course of action. And that's a solitary house cleaning and appraisal. So I said, okay, I'll get started on that tomorrow. And he said, here you go, boom, here's your notebook. You'll get started on that now. And I'm like, oh boy, here we go. So, you know, I said my 3rd step prayer, and I spit out 60 names right off the cuff, and off I went. You know, I've gone through the rest of the steps. You know, I went through that entire house cleaning. Wow, what an eye-opener that was. Turnarounds were really helpful for me, you know, to answer the selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and afraid questions. I had problems with the dishonesty part. I won't go into depth about it because we're not on that step. But my sponsor was key because he's the one that knew the directions in this book, not me. So I put all my trust in him because I had no relationship with God at that point. I went through that, you know. We sat for hours doing a 5th step together, you know. And it was unbelievable. We talked about it a lot. I would read, and then we would stop and discuss things because he wanted me to know the exact nature of my wrongs, you know. You know what you did there, right? And I'm like, yeah. And we conversate back and forth. It was wonderful. You know, 6 and 7 came and went. I know what defects to ask God to remove because I've illuminated them in my 4th step now. And that was extremely helpful for me. That's a step I practice daily. The 7th step prayer is big in my prayer and meditation because it's not if they crop up, it's when. So I ask for that daily, every single morning. And it's very helpful. It helps me out a great deal. You know, making my amends list was fairly easy. I had a bunch of people in my 4th step that list was already there. I just had to pluck the people out. There were actually other people in there that did not do anything to me that I owed amends to. And, you know, 3rd step prayer as usual. You know, alone, quiet place, make the list. The 9th step, I am working slothfully. I still have probably half my list left. I've been on the other side of this work for about 4.5 years. But when I get too slothful with it, God runs somebody right across my path. It's funny how that happens. You know, 10 and 11, those are my maintenance steps. You know, I've become my own pain in the butt, watching what I do, say, where my motives are. But it's a wonderful way to live the principles in this program, to keep an eye on my own behaviors. You know, of course, the prayer and meditation is key for me in step 11. Just love that. 3rd order of business every day. It's coffee, feed the cat, kitchen table. And every single day it's been that way since I've participated in this recovery. And, you know, this step we're on today, working with others, I mean, what can I say about it? It's what saves me every single day of my life. You know, I often used to say to my sponsor, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I really don't know how I'm going to juggle all this stuff, life, you know, work, helping other guys, all this stuff. He said, the whole point is you're not going to juggle it. You're going to go to God for guidance, and He's going to manage your life. He is your employer now. Remember? And I constantly needed reminders in the beginning. You know, I can tell you that right out the gate, this talks about nothing will ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. That is so true. That is true, you know. I go to a lot of open AA meetings, and I tell about some of my past experiences, as this chapter tells us to, and people know how hopeless I was, and they connect with some of the things I've done in life. And they know, because they've lost some of the things I have and feel the way I feel. You know, and I tell them where I found my solution, because it's my primary purpose, is to carry the message of this book. And I take that very seriously, you know. And, you know, I try to transmit it with as much humility as possible. That is so key for me, to know that I am not God. I am just a participant, you know. I am so fortunate and blessed to have found this way of life. All these things have been removed from me, all these obsessions. I'm a guy that couldn't put down a crack pipe and a handle of whiskey for not 5 minutes. And I don't touch any of that. I'm not even, it's so far removed from me, it's not even a thought anymore. I ran all around these streets in Worcester. And now I find myself coming here to carry a message of a solution that I've found. What a gift that is. What a gift that is, you know. The men that I bring through this book are the ones that help keep me sober, you know. They're my blessing. They truly are. I wake up some days and I just cannot believe how good things have gotten. And, you know, it is contingent upon the maintenance of that condition and connection with God, and how I bring this message to other alcoholics, you know. It's such a gift in life to be free from all that stuff. It's a guy that was just plucked from the heap, you know. I don't know why I got it. I just know that I went through enough pain to look for it. I did, you know. You know, I'll end with this. It's so important when I address a newcomer to carry a message with humility to these guys. You know, when I went to a meeting back in, what am I saying, two? It was back 1988 I went to my first meeting. And I don't mention groups, but I walked into this meeting and I was told to sit the hell down, shut up, and sit in the front row. You got nothing to say. And I left that hall pissed. And I didn't go back until 2012. And there were many times that I could have died from this disease because of that whole, I was just so turned off by it. I'm like, really, huh? That's what this whole thing is about? Well, we'll see you later. Not in those words either. And I never went back. A couple times just to keep the people in my family quiet so they'd leave me alone. But I didn't want to be there, you know. So I'm careful of how I connect with newcomers. Definitely from a place of humility. It's not me, it's God. And that's it. Thank you very much.